took off. And obviously they didn't see anything, but it frightened them so badly that they wondered if it might have been something alien trying to get into the vehicle. So,
well, I mean, it's hard to weigh in on that and not having all the facts and not really being there. There was an encounter of something. I have found that when people encounter these so-called aliens or greys or whatever, that oftentimes, paralysis will happen where they're not able to move. They can move their eyes around, but they're not able to move. There's a power that comes over them, and these entities will communicate with them telepathically, which is, it's a whole different paradigm than what you and I are used to. I've experienced some of this when I was involved in several exorcisms. It's very similar when you deal with a demonic entity. They come at you. When the thing comes at you, when it's in someone and it comes at you, it focuses its energies on you. The thoughts that come into your head, you realize aren't your own. They're just not your own. It's very similar to The Exorcist 2, where you're sitting there and the thing comes at you in images and thoughts, and what it does is it fogs your brain. It's very, very difficult to think because it's operating, and this is the whole crux of the book, Alien Interviews. It's operating on a paradigm which is normal to it. That's how it functions, okay? In other words, its inherent abilities are just how it's made, how it functions. And the same way we function with our five senses, it has those senses and more, some of which we know nothing about. It speaks of different power and a different dynamics that are inherent to those beings that we can only guess at. And one of those things is it's able to project that type of confusion, that type of a power over someone's mind. And I've witnessed this with, fairly recently, like last year, there was a woman who I believe was, I would say, demon-possessed, okay? And some of us went and tried to remove this thing. Well, rule number one, unless she wants it out, you can't cast it out. You can't take it out. She has to want the thing out. That's rule number one. Rule number two, something like this, unless people know what they're dealing with, they can get in a lot of trouble. And I backed off the thing, but not before the woman that was with me. I watched her all of a sudden she was befuddled, and she kind of looked at me like, why am I befuddled? And she was befuddled because that entity threw at her a force. I don't know how it operates, okay, but it threw something at her which clouded her mind. She was no longer able to speak. She was having a difficult time in speaking. And that's what it does. And that's, and when you go back and you look at ancient manuscripts, this is all par for the course. This is how these fallen angels or, the good guys, whenever they appear, it's the same type of power which comes over people. The good guys will come over and touch you and tell you to, okay, stand up, you're okay. Peace be with you, that type of thing. The bad guys thrive on the fear and will let you just wallow in it, which is what it so parallels, in my opinion, the whole alien abduction phenomena. There's so many similarities there. What are we really looking at? And in my opinion, we're looking at they're not extraterrestrial, they're interdimensional, i.e. fallen angels. And when you talk about that, people, again, when was the last time we saw them? Well, we haven't seen them. All we can do is talk to, let's say, abductees, or go back into ancient manuscripts and look at some of the encounters that people come up with when these things happen. And they're, with the good guys, good things happen. With the bad guys, it's nasty. Apparently, there was some sort of a confrontation. There was some sort of a war between these beings. Sides were drawn up, and we're kind of like, we're almost like cannon fodder in a way. There's this unseen war, which is happening in another dimension all around us that we don't see, because we're dull to it. And yet, I believe that there are principalities and rulers in very, very dark places. One of them, if I can digress for a bit, you can look at Iraq.
Real quick, Lynn, are we talking about the war between good and evil, heaven and hell?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can put it in those terms, and that helps most people come to grips with it. But this thing's been going on for thousands of years, and many of these ancient prophecies, I believe, which talk about, for instance, most people are aware of what Armageddon is, but when you look at the chaos that comes in the wake of Armageddon, it's some really bizarre stuff coming down. I mean, like really, really bizarre stuff coming down, which begs the question, are we looking at the time on the planet where some of these things may begin to manifest? And in my opinion, the UFO phenomena, guys, this is the bottom line. And I was asked if I was at a radio station on Thursday, and the guy kind of looked at me and kind of scoffed and said, do you really believe in this stuff? And I said, listen, pal, here's the deal. That 30 years ago, there were 1 or 2 sightings per year. Now there's over 300 to 400, sometimes even 600, like in August, sightings per month. The phenomena is not going away. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people have seen the phenomena. It's burgeoning. Now, if it wasn't this we were looking at, I'd be writing about whatever phenomena, was burgeoning, was manifesting. And this is the one deal that just will not stop. I mean, cattle mutilations are steady. Crop circles are there. Granted, there's hoaxers. I admit that. They're the alien abductions, and for instance, I interviewed Dr. Roger Lear, who we talked about a little bit earlier. The guy's a podiatrist, but he's actually taken out, surgical removed over 12 of these implants. I handled one. They've had the metal analyzed, and it's some sort of an alloy which they know nothing about. It shouldn't exist, and yet it does. He watches when he tries to go he talked to me about one where he moved his finger just above the person's skin, and the implant would move away from his finger, like an inch, a half an inch at a time. So as he's moving his finger, the implant would move away. When he goes in and he tries to cut these things out, sometimes the blood vessels and the nerve endings are wrapped around it. Instead of trying to move it out of the body like a BB or most implants would of a person, the body moves these things out. The body actually integrates with these implants. So something is going on, and we can all some of us choose to keep our heads in the sand and really not look at the phenomena. But when you look at the ongoing flap in Stevensville, Texas, in certain areas, the flaps in Illinois, and my hat's off to the History Channel because they do, I think, a fabulous job. And I had one of the reporters from the Stevensville local newspaper comes on the record and talks about she hasn't seen the lights, but just what it's caused in the town and where people are at, and how some people are fearful, other people don't want to talk about it, other people are trying to find out what it is, other people have come forward, and I talked one-on-one with Ricky Sorrell, who saw this thing up close and personal. That's a close encounter of the third kind. I mean, the craft was like right over his head, literally over his head. He estimated it to be over 1.5 miles wide. Couldn't see the edges of the thing, guys.
Wow.
And when you see the thing is like his operative word was overwhelming. When you see something like this, it's absolutely overwhelming. And that's my whole point. When one of these puppies shows up over L.A., or let's say 50 of them show up in different capitals of the earth, I mean, it's gonna cause a mega shift in people's thinking.
I saw that movie.
There you go. There you go. I did too.
Well, I tell you what, Lynn, I've never heard it actually put this way, where the UFOs, the little green men, whatever, interdimensionals, actually fallen angels, possibly. That goes back to biblical terms, and when it talks the biblical stories about when Lucifer was cast from heaven, and he was sent to Hades or hell or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Now, I'm not clear on my Bible. I haven't read it in quite some time, but wasn't he told he had to stay there in a different place other than he couldn't visit Earth or anything like that? He had to.
No, not at all. In fact, there's one prophecy which talks about that there's a war in heaven, and Satan or Lucifer is actually cast down to earth. And the following verse says, "Woe to the inhabitants of earth, because the devil has fallen, has now come among you, and he knows his time is short." See, the problem is, and here where I'm coming from, and I apologize to your listeners who have been in certain churches that have obfuscated the supernatural aspect of these ancient texts. This, you talked about the Bible. That book is the most supernatural book you'll ever want to encounter. And if you were to take the supernatural occurrences out of that book, you'd lose about 2/3 of it right off the bat. I mean, and in my opinion, it is a manual. Hear what I'm saying, guys? It's a manual of how to operate in the supernatural. And all that has been, and I'm broad brushing here, but much of it has been lost through the centuries, through the churches, through ritual and dogma and traditions. But the whole book is a guidebook to how to operate in the supernatural. That's what it's